At Team Toyota, they've been selling and servicing new and used Toyotas in your community for over 50 years. And you can reserve your next new Toyota with them today. You'll get a realistic timeline, and even in this crazy market, they won't charge you over MSRP. Or don't wait at all. With over 75 certified Toyotas, including a bunch of RAV4 and Highlanders, you can drive one home today. And you can always trust them to maintain your current vehicle. Their service and collision centers are high-tech, comfortable, and will save you time and money. Team Toyota can help you go anywhere you want, but they'll always be your hometown team. Just visit teamtoyota.net and choose from 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton. What a beautiful morning it is. Welcome to the Phillies Talk podcast. I'm Corey Seidman and he's Jim Salisbury. And there's just 2 teams left in Major League Baseball, the Phillies and the Houston Astros, who will be playing for the World Series beginning on Friday. Jim, the Phillies clincher on Sunday, crazy game. When you start to think about how they would have drawn it up, having Zach Wheeler on the mound, having Bryce Harper come to the plate representing the go-ahead run in the bottom of the 8th inning, moment after moment, time after time over these last 2 weekends, it's like every time the Phillies had an opportunity for something dramatic to happen, something dramatic happened. And that was probably the moment Bryce Harper had been waiting his whole life for.
Well, it's funny. I kind of asked him that exact question after his press conference. I was chatting with him off to the side, and, he admitted you're in the backyard as a kid and you're dreaming of, 3-2 count, big home run to win the game. But he said, you don't dream of doing it in the LCS. Your dream is always doing it in the World Series. And he's going to get an opportunity to do that because he took the best swing of his life in the bottom of the 8th inning with JT Realmuto on base, the team down a run, and 45,000 people supporting him. He delivered the final blow, the big blow, but it was an incredible, and it has been an incredible team effort throughout this month. Squeak in, 87 wins, 6th seed. They had 24 fewer wins than the top seed. They get into this postseason tournament, as we always talk about, get in and get hot, and they're 9-2. And I mentioned it's a team effort, and I could go through every guy on the roster and tell you how they made a contribution. I really could. That's how closely I watch this stuff. But I need to point this out. What are they now, 5-0 at home in the postseason? The fans aren't just part of this as spectators, and the fans aren't just coming out of that ballpark with a great memory. They're actually part of these victories. They're part of these victories. They are a difference maker. The energy they're providing that team, the unnerving effect they're having on the opponents. They are part of this thing. They're not just joyous bystanders. They are the extended roster. I mean, Hoskins, what an amazing story he's been. Big two-run homer. Wheeler pitches great. Things seem to be falling apart in the rain. I mean, if that didn't make you feel like Game 5 of the World Series in 08, I mean, whoa, crazy. But the lineup never quit. The Phillies never quit. The offense never quit. And the fans never quit on the Phillies. And, though JT Realmuto with a great emotional base hit in the bottom of the 8th, and he turns to the dugout, pumps his fist. I watched him run up that line that whole time, and I'm like, wow, look at him. He wasn't just pumped. He was actually, almost like sticking his head in the dugout saying, we can do this. And then Harper, it's 1-2, fouls off a couple pitches. And then we've seen him hit that lightning bolt before, that kind of low line drive into the left field seats. Boom, crushes it. It's like a bullet. And an amazing performance by Bryce Harper. It's what we've kind of come to expect here. I mean, did it for 3.5 months in 2021. carried the team all alone, kept them in postseason contention all alone. And he propels them into the World Series with the biggest swing of his life. But JT Realmuto and Ranger Suarez and Reese Hoskins and Zach Wheeler and that whole roster and Rob Thompson and the fans as well, not just joyous bystanders, as I said, really a part of the winning process here in Philadelphia. One of my most memorable days in that ballpark, and I've spent a lot of them there. I spent a lot of them in Veterans Stadium. The Phillies are going to the World Series, but they're already champions. They've won a National League championship. That's unbelievable. Where they were on June 3rd, they fired their manager. They were down and out. They were a dead-end team. Then they lost their superstar for 2 months. They lost their quality second baseman for 2 months. They lost Zach Wheeler and Seranthony Dominguez. But they just stayed there and stayed there and stayed there. And they struggled in September, and they got there with 87 wins. They got in. They are hot, and now they're in the World Series. It's a magnificent story. And you captured it so well on NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com with your piece about the celebration, Corey. I hope everybody clicks on that and reads it and relives it. And who knows what the next 10 days are going to hold. But I'll tell you what, these first 3 weeks of quote unquote Red October have been amazingly entertaining and dramatic and just a kind of memorable and a thrill to watch. And now Red October is guaranteed to go into November because Game 4 of the World Series will be in Citizens Bank Park on November 1st. So sorry for the typical long-windedness, but there's a lot there.
Yeah, there sure is. This playoff run, it kind of reawakened a baseball town. And you're talking about how the crowd has played such a role in these games. I think part of the reason is that these opposing players and opposing teams were unprepared for it. I mean, they know that Philadelphia is a sports crazed town, but there are few active players who were even playing back in 2011 and 2010 during that run when the Phillies were selling out. So it hadn't been that sort of atmosphere at Citizens Bank Park. I would assume that most players are going to Philly these last couple of rounds, assuming it's going to be like a normal playoff series. Yeah. Everybody's fans are hyped during the playoffs, but it's a little bit different how loud it gets in Philadelphia. And
it is a little bit. It's a little more throaty, and you make a good point. It hasn't happened in a while. And I was talking to John Middleton, the owner, after the game, and I mean, he acknowledged what a difference maker the crowd has been. Like I said, Bob Melvin, the opposing manager, acknowledged it. But Middleton was saying, because they didn't sell out maybe 3 times all year, and I think 2 of them were firework nights, and one of them was opening day. And I never like to really comment about, where are the fans, because to me that's focusing on the people who are out there. And I think the people who come, those 19 to 22,000, 23, 28. I mean, those, you tip your hat to those people that are there every night supporting, instead of wondering where people are, I'd like to tip my hat to the people who are there. But the crowds have been different and bigger. And John Middleton acknowledged, he said he always knew the fans would be there the minute the Phillies gave the fans something to believe in. The minute these very discerning fans believed this team was for real, he knew they would be there. And I mean, we thought they would be for real coming out of spring training. We thought they'd be a good club, contending club, playoff club. A lot of struggles, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of inconsistencies. But at the most important time of the year, they're proven again to be a good ball club, or proven what we thought, that they'd be a good ball club. So been exciting.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. I mean, a lot of these guys are saying they're not surprised to be here because of the talent level that the Phillies have and, the belief that they all have in each other. But some guys are also saying that it hasn't really sunk in for them yet that they're here. Just watching that scene in the clubhouse yesterday after the game, it was a lot of guys who, they've celebrated all month. They've celebrated 3 times prior to this, but for many of these guys, it's their first time advancing, getting to the playoffs and then advancing round by round. So it's new for them. I guess it's old hat if you're the Astros and you've been to the World Series 4 times in the last 6 years. Your celebrations are probably a little more subdued, but to just see all the different, pockets of the clubhouse, the way that guys were partying and hugging each other and just deliriously happy. One of the guys who was most, one of the guys who was everywhere was Ranger Suarez, who was a key down the stretch for the Phillies, and then gets the final two outs. The final two out, we're looking out at the bullpen in the ninth inning with David Robertson in there. Is that Ranger Suarez? Is that Ranger Suarez getting up to loosen up? And yeah, sure enough, there he is, and comes in, throws two pitches, gets the save. Zach Eflin after the game said that Ranger Suarez has the biggest balls of anybody he's seen in his entire life. Nobody was surprised that he was able to come in and do that, just given how calm and collected he is all the time.
Are you allowed to say balls on the Phillies Talk podcast?
I think so. Yes, I think so.
I think you just did, but I would agree with you. I mean, he's got closer experience. It came in pretty handy. That kid, man, he is just chill. Nothing rattles him, whatever. And he showed you what a great athlete he is. This kid grew up playing soccer in Venezuela. Soccer was his first love. And he was a great soccer player. I think still is. You get out there early at the ballpark and you'll see him kicking around a soccer ball. It's like a conditioning drill. These guys do sprints, but a lot of time they'll add a Frisbee or a soccer ball or even a football to kind of, have something to do while you're doing your sprints. I've seen him. He wears a Union shirt often with his name on the back. And he loves soccer. He's a good soccer player. I see him out there kicking a soccer ball around all the time. But my point is, he's a really good athlete. And on wet grass, he springs off that mound and, like a ballerina, clean pickup, spin, delivers a strike to Rhys Hoskins at first base. I mean, that was very athletic play for the 26th out. But, yeah, amazing performance. That's what I mean. Like, everybody. I think back to middle of the season, Derek Hall coming up, 9 big home runs, and Nick Maton having his moments to fill in, and Nick Nelson out of the bullpen, sort of all these periphery guys. And I'm missing Bailey Falter with those big fill-in starts for Wheeler and Eflin, and the team winning like 6 of them.
Matt Vierling.
And Matt Vierling having big moments. And, I kind of exclude Stott and Bohm from the young ascending group because I feel like they play every day. They're regulars and they look the part. They look like regulars. They're core guys. I'm trying to make the point that these guys on the periphery have done a great job filling in and doing things for this team. Guthrie made I think maybe one of the best defensive plays of the season in Atlanta in September when he ran like 125 feet to make a sliding catch at the railing. So, it just, I asked after they beat the Cardinals in St. Louis, I asked Rob Thompson if he felt like something special was brewing, and he said he did. Because these guys are so damn unselfish, he said. They're playing well, they smell it, they taste it, and they're just so damn unselfish, was his quote. And, it does kind of feel like something. And, I don't know that they're going to beat the Houston Astros. They're a powerhouse. I mean, they're 9-0 already in the postseason. They have a lot of motivation frankly, they have a lot of motivation to kick the Phillies' ass, right? I mean, they've been to a number of World Series, and they've been to the LCS, ALCS like 6 years in a row, I think it is, 7 out of the last 8, something like that. And they've only won one World Series, and it's tainted because of the cheating scandal. So it doesn't matter who they're going to play. They want to kick somebody's ass because they want to have their legitimate World Series trophy. It's going to be a tough battle. Their pitching is unbelievable. They have great momentum, but to me, the Phillies have already accomplished so much with the league championship. They'll have a league championship flag above their stadium. Maybe they'll have a World Series flag. We will see. But getting back on that train of thought about something special here, you see Castellanos hits the ball up the middle in Game 4. It hits the base. It hits the base for an RBI single. Gene Segura puts his bat on the ball on 2 balls way off the plate. And drives in runs with him. The all-star closer in St. Louis melts down, but the Phillies capitalize. Ranger Suarez makes an appearance out of the bullpen on wet ground and makes a great play. And your showman superstar hits a bolt, and Rhys Hoskins can't pick up the ball, but he can hit him over the fence. I mean, it's just like crazy, all the things that are happening. And they got this manager who was kind of resigned to the fact that he was going to be a bench coach the rest of his life. And all of a sudden he gets a shot to manage. And and he's Casey Stengel. It's just an amazing run.
You know, in some ways, I guess maybe it shouldn't be super surprising. Like when you look back at this season, think about how many times the Phillies came back late in games. Think about how many times they got to elite starting pitchers, elite setup men, elite closers. You mentioned how everybody contributed, very 2008 like in that regard. You know, I look to the bullpen as well. That 2008 team, you had guys like, you know, Scott Air, you know, like
JC.
Say that again.
JC Romero.
JC Romero, like guys who, you know, were unheralded.
Chad Durbin got a lot of big outs. I mean, to me,
Clay Condrey, you know, all those little
Clay Condrey was such an unsung hero on that team. And then Ryan Madsen's emergence final 2 months was, to me, the big difference maker. When all of a sudden now you had Madsen and Lidge paired up together. But, I mean, you're right. Condrey and Romero and Air and Durbin leading up to those guys. Just everybody contributed.
And then you spin that forward to this team. You have guys like Andrew Bellotti, for example, who there haven't been many headlines about Andrew Bellotti this season, but he has a 3.24 ERA with like 35 more strikeouts than innings pitched. He's been a really good bridge guy. The Phillies needed him in this series. They got an inning and a third from Noah Syndergaard in this series, scoreless. I talked to Syndergaard after the game. I said, do you remember when you first got here saying that you were on cloud 9 playing here? And he said, yeah, you know, if you would have told Brandon Marsh and I at the trade deadline that we'd be playing for the World Series, if you would have told us that in April, I don't think we would have believed you. But, you know, here they are. It's just so crazy. Now spinning this forward and looking ahead to the Astros, yeah, they're a great team, 106 wins, undefeated in the playoffs. They have enough pitching to fill out 2 rotations. They have Yordan Alvarez, who has been a standout slugger all year. I mean, if he's not a household name already, I mean, he's going to be very soon, and he's done so in these playoffs. He's every bit as dangerous as Bryce Harper, for example. But, you know, you and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, Jim, that if the Phillies jump out to a big lead in game 1, you know, I assume they're going to face Justin Verlander. If they jump out to a big lead, if they steal a game in Houston, anything's possible.
Yeah.
And we've seen that throughout this playoff run. The Phillies have been underdogs in all 3 playoff series, but because they've jumped on teams, because they're so confident, because they expect to come up with big hits in every big spot, really, you know, anything can happen.
Yeah, you got to steal a game. You got to steal a game, and you're capable of stealing a game behind Wheeler and Nola. They'll go games 1 and 2. I mean, Nola already pitched a gem against those Astros a few weeks ago. One of the best games of his career. Wheeler is on a great roll here. Pitched great again yesterday. So you steal 1, and then you're looking at 3 games at home. I mean, you know, it's not a bad setup when you play in Citizens Bank Park and the fans are your 10th man, I don't know, 11th man, whatever you call it. The fans are a weapon. Now, don't be surprised if that ballpark down there, Minute Maid Park, is louder than Philadelphia. They have a roof. They put the roof on, and that place just shakes. But no place is as throaty as Philadelphia. And no place is as intimidating as Philadelphia. No place has more grit than this city. No group of fans does. So both places are going to be loud. The Dome will be loud, but Citizens Bank Park will be loud as well. And you just wonder if they can steal 1. I mean, having 3 at home is not the worst thing in the world. I mean, you're going to have to – they have great pitching. Houston has great pitching. They have power. But when the Phillies are clicking, their lineups are not – you know, there's some – they compare okay lineup-wise when they're clicking. I mean, obviously, you got to play good defense. You can't give extra base runners. You can't walk people. You can't lengthen innings and give extra outs because that's when the Astros or any good team will eat you up. But play good defense, you know, throw strikes, get good pitching, steal a win, and see what can happen back here in games 3, 4, and 5. You know, and who knows? I mean, another thing, everything's lining up for the Phillies or lined up. They don't even have a 4th starter they can depend on. They do not have a 4th starter that they trust to say, you're our 4th starter. Go give us 6 and a third. You know, they got every 4th game they got to piece something together out there, and so far they've won 2 ball games doing it. Amazing.
Yeah, so I mean, in this series, well, first off, Jim, let me ask you this. I got this question about 100 times on Twitter last night, which is, Do you think that the Phillies might move Aaron Nola ahead of Wheeler for Game 1 based on the success Nola had in Houston and the season and the fact that it would give Wheeler an extra day? What do you think of that?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, that's a plausible idea, giving Wheeler the extra day. Um, Going with Nola. I mean, he had great success against that lineup. Um, I don't know how motivated that lineup was that night.
Right.
They had clinched like 10 days earlier, and Dusty was moving his starters in and out. But nonetheless, I mean, Aaron Nola was great. He located. Um, you know, it doesn't. It shouldn't thrill the Phillies that they got to look at him, but they needed to clinch that night. I don't know what they'll do, and getting him extra rest certainly is a valid thought. It could happen. I think you have to look at what happens down the road. So that would mean Nola would pitch games 1 and 5, right? So that puts Nola at home for his second start instead of on the road, and he's pitched very well at home. I mean, it certainly is a valid idea. There's no access to the Phillies today, but it's certainly something we could ask and will ask on Tuesday. I believe there'll be some access. So maybe they do that because they have prioritized rest, and they're very conscious of that. But also Rob Thompson is one of these, stay the course, never panic, stay in your routine, and there's a lot of value to that. Example, everybody wanted him to blow up the 1 and 2 spots in the lineup because Schwarber and Hoskins were struggling, and then all of a sudden they went crazy, and they rewarded his faith. I don't know what they're going to do. Certainly a valid thought on all your Twitter friends who are suggesting that.
Schwarber, by the way, has a 600 on-base percentage since being intentionally walked by Spencer Strider in front of Rhys Hoskins when Hoskins hit that 3-run bomb. Since that time, Schwarber's been on base in 18 of his 30 plate appearances. He scored 9 runs. So,
Wow.
The whole thing about he's a slugger, maybe he doesn't make sense in the leadoff spot. We're seeing when he's going right why he makes sense in the leadoff spot because he comes up a lot, he gets on base a lot, he scores a lot. The Phillies, you really can't say the Phillies' 3 best hitters in the Padres series were Schwarber, Hoskins, and Harper. And much of the reason that there were RBI opportunities for those guys because Schwarber was getting on base so much. And just thinking about that crowd in Houston, you talking about how the building's loud, could totally see Schwarber popping one into the Crawford box in the opposite way, just putting a nice short swing on one. Same goes for Harper. That's a hitter's ballpark.
Yeah, especially to left field. I mean, it's just too short. It's a really cool ballpark, and I used to go there a lot when the team was bad in Houston. It was dead, but it is really alive. They do a great job with their in-game entertainment. It's an electric place, but I have always thought the ballpark was a little too gimmicky. They got rid of the hill in center field, which to me was an ACL injury waiting to happen. That was a smart move. I don't mind short porches. Tiger Stadium had one. Fenway Park has one. Yankee Stadium, the old Yankee Stadium had one. The new Yankee Stadium has a ridiculous one. And I just don't like the looks of the Crawford boxes. I shouldn't say the look is fine, but I just think it's too much of a pop shot, It's too much of a sandwich for these guys. But it is part of the ballpark. I mean, Alex Bregman just peppers that thing. Altuve knows how to pepper it. It'll be interesting. It is a cool environment. But you mentioned Schwarber and Hoskins and Rob Thompson. I started asking him about the lineup in Chicago during that final week when they got swept, and he wasn't changing it, And I agreed with him because I think it would have been perceived as panic in the clubhouse. And panic is a bad emotion in baseball. Baseball, you need to be very even keeled. It's not football where you bang your head against the locker and play better. No, you get over emotional, and panic is to me an example of being over emotional, and you don't play well. So he wanted to stick with those guys at the top 2 for one reason. They were the guys who helped him get there. They electrified the team and brought the team back to life. Schwarber and Hoskins in the month of June, and he believed that they were going to get hot, and he didn't want to miss it. He didn't want to miss it, and he was right.
Jim, when you have one good year like this or one crazy playoff run like this, it changes a lot of narratives. And I'm just wondering, for much of the last decade, there's been the conversation that the Phillies don't develop enough. They don't develop enough young players. They don't have enough homegrown talent. You look at this roster, this playoff roster: Sir Anthony Dominguez, Zach Eflin, Bailey Falter, Aaron Nola, Ranger Suarez, Rhys Hoskins, Alec Boehm, Bryson Stott, Matt Vierling. So about 40% of that roster, homegrown. A lot of these guys coming up with production in big spots. Wondering if that storyline has maybe changed a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's a really valid point. I mean, Matt Klentak, his regime was criticized a lot for missing on draft picks. Well, both the guys on the left side of the infield came out of that regime, doing a good job with Stott and Boehm. The fringe guys, the guys on the edges, the Vierlings and the Matons and Guthries and Halls, they're all homegrown. I mean, Sir Anthony and Ranger Suarez were both products of their Latin American system. And, they're criticized, why don't you have an Acuna? Why don't you have a Soto? Well, they got a Ranger Suarez and a Sir Anthony Dominguez, and they spent about $50,000 on those two guys combined. So, I mean, yeah, you're right. They got a kid like Marsh who's 23 years old, and he could be out there for 5, 6, 7, 8 years in center field. He's an ascending player. He's the youngest guy on the team. He's getting better. You gave up a homegrown guy to get him. So that's another example of your farm system helping you. You gave up some homegrown pieces to get JT Realmuto. You used your financial might to get Bryce Harper. That's how it comes together: the draft, international signings, good trades, good free agent signings. And I'm not ready to say it's there yet, but yeah, you can see things are getting better. And on that note, I will tell you this. There was a young man in the stands yesterday watching it all, and his name was Andrew Painter. And he could be a foundation piece of this rotation, for the next decade. I don't know when he's going to get here, but he's going to get here. Might get here next year. It'll take him some time to get his feet wet and develop into what they all think he can be. But, he was in the stands yesterday taking it all in. So it feels like good things are happening, not just now, but, in the near future as well. And it feels like this could be sustainable because, for the first time I can remember, they have like 3 really quality starting pitching prospects all together. They've had pockets before. There was the baby aces thing, but they've never had 3 with the explosiveness in the same age group, arriving kind of on the same path. Never had 3 like Andrew Painter, Mick Abel, and Griff McGarry. And we could start to see them knocking at the door next year. So, I'm sure Andrew Painter was sitting up there in the stands and the seeds were planted, and he's going to want to be part of the celebrations like this. So, and I think it should be more the norm than an exception. Philly's a big, important sports city. This is a franchise with great resources. To me, they need to be more like the Cardinals and the Red Sox. I know the Red Sox have had a couple inconsistent years here, but, I look at those teams as, when they don't make the playoffs, it's like people are stunned. Like it's the exception. Especially the Cardinals are like there every year. They need to be like that, where when you don't make the playoffs, I'm not saying you're going to go deep every year, but when you don't make the playoffs, when you don't contend, it's sort of like the exception. And I know that's their goal, and it's been their goal for a long time. They haven't been able to sustain it for a lot of different reasons, but you do feel like things are getting better. But here in the present, things are pretty good as well. I mean, they've gotten in, they've gotten hot. They're amazingly entertaining. They're a great story. They believe in themselves. They're a very close team. I remember talking to Schwarber during batting practice. 2 months ago. And, 6 weeks ago maybe, and he felt like good things were happening. And this is a guy who's been on a lot of winning teams, and he knows what it takes. And the thing he liked most about this team, and they were in wild card contention at this point. They were probably leading the wild card some of those days. The thing he liked most about this team was the closeness. And he said, good teams are close. And they do have that chemistry going for them. And I think in addition to the way they're playing, in addition to the weapon the home ballpark has become, I think their closeness is one of their strengths that's propelling them as well.
All right, one final question, and that is, if it's the 8th inning, if the game's on the line, do you think Hector Neris is going to groove one to help out his old team, give him a little hand?
Hell no. These are competitors. They want to kill each other and beat each other. I mean, you look at the two Nola brothers. I mean, they're flesh and blood, and they're trying to crush each other. So no, Hector Neris ain't grooving anything. He was a longtime Philly, product of the Latin American system. They signed him for $17,000, and and now he's making millions as a long-time quality reliever. He's a great splitter. You can know it's coming, but when he executes it, you can't hit it. So he was here a long time. He probably was their longest tenured Philly at the end of last year. And they tried to re-sign him, but he got a nice offer from Houston. And I think Hector felt like it was time because, they'd been trying to climb the mountain and they could never get there. And he saw an opportunity to go to a team that, kind of a ready-made team ready to win. And he went over there and he's had a great season for Houston. And he's one of the real good guys that have come through here in the last decade. So I know a lot of people with the Phillies are really happy for him. But come Friday night, they're going to be trying to whip his ass. So, we'll see.
Yeah, the Phillies signed Hector Neris once upon a time for $17,000. The Astros signed him this offseason for $17 million, and he's been a key member of their back end of their bullpen with Brian Presley. So that's just one of many storylines to follow for this Phillies-Astros World Series. Still sounds kind of crazy to say out loud, but it begins Friday night in Houston. Jim and I will be back before then, but thanks for checking out the Phillies Talk podcast. Talk soon.